But right now I want to bring in Jan Griffiths. She is a former auto supply chain executive. She hosts the Automotive Leaders Podcast, and she's just an all-around expert on tariffs. Jan, thank you so much for taking the time tonight.
Great to be here.
So let's start. You were talking off air, and you were saying that it has been a busy week involving tariffs. What have we seen?
It has been a busy week. The Trump administration has launched a national security investigation for imports of robotics, industrial equipment, and medical equipment. Now, this is setting the stage for perhaps another wave of tariffs if it's proven that there is indeed a national security issue with these products. But what's really interesting, Aaron, is if we're going to bring manufacturing back to the U.S., which clearly we are on a path to make that happen, we're going to need robotics. We're going to need industrial equipment. And a lot of the robotics come from Japan and from Europe. So that's going to make the manufacturing equation a little bit more difficult.
And make it a lot more expensive to get the manufacturing up and running. And I mean, you look at any assembly line video that we show on any of our shows, one of the things you see is that robotic equipment. And that's so important for so many industries.
That's right. And you'll see it coming from Japan or Europe. Those are the primary countries that we buy that robotics equipment from. So I hope that it does not end up in another wave of tariffs, but it certainly looks like it's setting the stage.
And so, and the question I have, you mentioned that we're on a path to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. In your mind, were we on that path before the tariffs, or is this a sign that the tariffs are having having the effect that President Trump wanted?
Well, there's definitely a lot more energy, and certainly companies are taking action to bring some manufacturing back here. But exactly how much and the full impact of that, Aaron, I don't know. I mean, the tariffs have so many ripple effects. We saw it with GM, when GM announced their tariff impact of $1.1 billion, the knock-on effect of that to the line worker, where it's impacting their bonus check because the GM profits are lower. You know, there's so many different tentacles to the tariff plan. It's really hard to figure out exactly what the benefit is right now.
And you said that as far as, like, for example, we're looking at some video from the assembly lines right now. We're still not seeing the full effect of those tariffs yet. And so for that big of a number, that might be a sign of things to come for other automakers.
Yes. And we've also seen many times, I've been on the show, we've talked about when are the tariffs going to hit the consumer? When is the consumer going to feel it? And we know that the automakers are absorbing most of these tariffs, but that can't last. That cannot last. GM, Stellantis, Chrysler, and Ford, they cannot continue to absorb all of these tariffs. They're going to have to start to pass it on to the consumer.
And we're already seeing in some areas, other industries, a lot of small businesses especially are saying, hey, we have to pass this cost along to you because we simply can't afford to absorb it. So they're not obviously these multi-billion-dollar companies like the big three and other automakers around the world, but you're saying that's inevitable.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you mentioned soybeans as well. What's the latest there, and what's the impact that we could feel from those?
Yeah, soybeans have really been hitting the news today. Did you know that China actually purchases more than 50% of the U.S. production of soybeans?
I didn't know.
I didn't realize that it was, I knew they were a large buyer, but I didn't realize it was more than 50% of our total production. So now it makes sense why these farmers are up in arms and so concerned, because China has now started to buy soybeans from South America. And I read an article this morning that there is not one single order from China coming in for the upcoming harvest. Now, that was news as of this morning. That might have changed, but that's quite alarming. Now, President Trump has said that he's looking at taking some of the tariff money that he's received and finding a way to give that to the farmers to help the farmers out. So that was something that was talked about today. I don't know whether that will actually take effect, and we'll see that happen, and time will tell.
Yeah, and that's something that maybe people hadn't necessarily thought about, because the big focus on on these tariffs has been, especially the automakers here in Metro Detroit, and understandably so. But we heard from the beginning of this that farmers could be hurt as well.
Yes.
And so, as far as that goes, I'm wondering. President Trump is saying, like, we're going to take some of the money that we made, we're going to give it to our farmers who are for a little while going to be hurt until their tariffs kick into their benefit. So we're going to make sure that our farmers are in great shape because we're taking in a lot of money. That's President Trump's reporters in the Oval Office, according to Politico. So
yes,
again, hope seems like maybe trying to help the farmers out, but we're looking at not only the product that they grow, but also the equipment that they have to buy, all of that being upcharged as well.
Exactly.
And so I want to turn now to the European Union. They're saying that there was a deal reached that's retroactive to August. And the automakers they're saying they're saving $585 to $700 million. Do you think there is any veracity to that?
Well, it depends on how you define the word savings.
Okay.
Are they not going to be paying as much in tariffs as they would have been if the tariffs that were announced earlier this year had held, which was in the region of 25%, and that's on top of the roughly 2.5% that they paid. So they're looking at a 27.5% number. So now they're looking at 15%. So if you look at 15 versus 27.5, okay, but is that a savings? Well, no, because they weren't paying that at the beginning of the year. They were looking at a number more in the region of 2.5%. So I don't agree that that's a savings. It's more of a tariff avoidance. It's a cost avoidance. But certainly for the European automakers, it's good news. The number is locking in at 15%, which is what they talked about when they had an agreement, and that's good. Now, the US automakers are not going to be too happy about that because Canada, Mexico, still question marks, still looking at that 25% number. So in theory, it's cheaper to buy a car, a European-made car now than it is to buy a car from an American company where it maybe has a lot of Mexican or Canadian content.
And again, that brings up a good point, Jan, that you were saying, you've said several times on the Pulse before, you've said it here as well. There's no such thing as a truly American-made car.
No.
That is a complete misnomer, isn't it?
Yes. Cars are assembled in America, of course they are. But the products, the component parts that make up that vehicle, a significant portion of those parts come from all over the world. And the entire industry right now, we are frantically working with and re-engineering our supply chains to bring as much of that product back to the U.S. as we possibly can.
And forgive me if I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here. I do want to ask you, because you hear about you were saying cheaper to possibly buy a European-made car than an American-made. Can you give us some examples of just European car brands that I'm trying to think of them off the top of my head as well, but like what ones are we talking here? Volkswagen,
Audi. Now, what's interesting is, remember, when you talk about Europe and the UK, that's two different things because of Brexit. The UK is no longer part of Europe. So the UK tariff is at 10% for the first 100,000 vehicles. So in theory, maybe the British vehicles are slightly cheaper. Again, it depends on the make, the model, and the level of trim that you want on each vehicle. But those are some of the names that are going to stick out. Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche's in trouble, those kind of vehicles for sure.
Possibly BMW as well.
BMW is in there, yes.
So, and I guess big picture here, Jan, where are we feeling the most impact right now, and where are we headed?
Yeah, well, I think that certainly the big three automakers are feeling it. They are feeling it. The consumer part of this is coming. We're starting to see it in all the consumer goods that we buy. And as time goes on, we're going to feel it more and more. Certainly as we get ready for the holidays, we're going to start to feel it.
And so Christmas shopping, for example, can really be more expensive.
Absolutely. I would prepare for that now.
And so, what is the best advice for consumers? Obviously, just be ready, save more money. What can we do?
Be ready. Yeah. Just be aware And be more aware when you're buying things where they're made. We all see that tag on everything that we buy, made in the US, made in China, made in India. Just be aware of the products that you're buying. And of course, if you can buy American, buy American.
Absolutely. And again, just it really hurts these small businesses, especially having to pass it on to consumers. But again, we're going to see corporations, it seems like, across the board having to do the same thing, because that the absorbing it can only last so long.
Exactly.
So is there anything that you think we're missing at this point? Is there any story that you think is not getting enough coverage when it comes to tariffs?
Yeah, I think that what we're not giving enough coverage to is the fact that the auto industry, the real issue for the auto industry, is actually not tariffs.
Okay.
And you might be surprised when I say that. The big threat to the US auto industry right now is the Chinese OEMs. The Chinese car companies are producing great quality product at great prices. We don't see those vehicles here in the US because of the tariffs. Tariffs are so high, we've completely prevented them from entering into the US market. But they are there and they are ready to come in and get us. That really is the big story in the automotive industry.
And that's fascinating to me too, because it's just not something you necessarily think of. You hear constantly tariffs are the big threat, but when could we see this happen?
Yeah, I don't...
Or no timeline necessarily?
No. Well, right now, the Chinese vehicles are not allowed in this country. I mean,
Okay.
we don't see them. So we don't feel the threat because we don't see those vehicles. You go to Mexico, you'll see MG, which, by the way, was originally a British brand, but that's owned by a Chinese company. You'll see BYD. BYD is in the news a lot. That is one of the largest EV manufacturers around the globe. And they are taking over markets all over the world, just not here in America yet.
Interesting stuff. Jan Griffiths, always good to have you on. Last question for you, probably the easiest one. What is the Automotive Leaders Podcast and where can people find it?
The Automotive Leaders Podcast features leaders who really get it, who understand the future of automotive and understand leadership and culture, and it is on your favorite podcast app.
Definitely going to have to check that out. Jan Griffiths, always good to see you. Come back again soon. You do such an amazing job just making this understandable for everyone. Such complicated topics, and we appreciate your insight.